Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our roundtable Beyond Carbon Footprint: How to Reach Operations in IT Decarbonization Management. I am Tristan Vullier, a Sustainability Offers Lead at Devoteam France, and I will be your host for the next 45 minutes. Today, around the table, we have experts from Devoteam, BNP Paribas, BCF, IT, and Soft, who will take us through some insights on sustainable IT. As you know, technological development is directly linked to the consumption of resources and energy. And this pressure on resources is today mainly monitored through carbon emissions they generate. And it is becoming a central theme for many companies that must also respond to new regulatory challenges linked to social and environmental responsibility. Consequently, we see that CIOs are playing an increasingly central role in companies' quest to meet their environmental objectives. They are called upon to respond to two main challenges. The first one is to industrialize the CSR approaches, and the second one is to reduce the environmental impact of their digital assets. So we're here today to talk about this second challenge. Since this is a live event, feel free to ask any questions to our experts in the comment section, and we will take some at the end of the session. So for this 45-minute session, we will start with the role of carbon data in our operations to monitor and steer the sustainable IT strategy. Then we will have a look at an example of this kind of project with Soft and BNP Paribas BCF, exploring the challenges faced by the teams. And finally, some insights regarding the international stakes on those topics before going to the Q&A sessions. Let's start then, and I'm happy to present you our guest today. So first, Karin, sustainability expert from Devoteam Sweden. Françoise, sustainability manager at BNP
Hi.
Paribas BCF IT. Anand, a consultant for BNP Paribas BCF IT and the Green Eco project. And Jeremy, CEO of Soft, which is, by the way, a techno from Devoteam Tech Radar. And a few words about the Tech Radar. It is a guide that provides a comprehensive overview of what's happening across technological landscape in perpetual motion. So it's like a Lonely Planet publication to navigate tech with 150 technologies identified by our Devoteam tech leaders. So feel free to download it on the link below. So first, we will start. First question for Françoise and Jeremy. To go beyond the carbon balance, how can we use carbon data in our operations to monitor and steer a sustainable IT strategy?
So thank you, Tristan, for your question. First of all, let's have a look at BNP Paribas BCUF's sustainable IT strategy. For several years now, the use of our resources has been at the heart of BCUF's IT priorities. We work to optimize our information system through key action from our 2020 strategic plan as information system optimization, proactive decommissioning, roadmap, etc. And the construction of our 2025 strategic plan was an opportunity to consolidate upon and leverage the steps we have already taken around sustainability. And more specifically, it was an opportunity for us to redefine our objectives around three main principles in our sustainable IT policy. And the first deals with our IT equipment. In fact, we have transformed the way of maintaining devices, and the objective is to expand their lifespan. And we have, for instance, completely separated device amortization from device actual lifespan. The second is to work on energy consumption, and it involves working on footprint measurement and eco-design. And last but not least, raise awareness and train people to the challenges of sustainable development so that they can become actors of this transformation and carry out the messages.
This is really interesting to hear. This word eco-design, can you tell and explain a little bit more about that?
Yes, Karen. To focus on eco-design, did you know that the Green IT program actually started as an entrepreneurial project I initiated? And it then evolved to include eco-design. And we started with 2 pilot projects, each aiming to measure one business application carbon impact. We then realized that to scale up the projects to our ambitions, we needed to measure the carbon impact of all relevant level of application. That means from front end to back end. So a third project was created, Green Eco, and that is where uh, the EcoScore and our partnership with Soft started. And our goals for this EcoScore is to design a solution to easily assess the carbon footprint of BCUF IT customer journeys and minimize the carbon impact on the customer journeys, or at least keep it stable. And Jeremy, the floor is yours for your part.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's very interesting to talk about eco design, because very often when companies are implementing an eco design strategy, it's always very like forward looking. It's like, how can I make sure that for my next digital services I will take into account frameworks, new language, and sobriety of where my services are hosted, etc. So it's very forward looking. But I think it's very important to remember that companies went through a tremendous digital acceleration in the last decades, where they were implementing new technologies, IoT, blockchains, AI, etc. But never the environmental topic was taken into account, or was not considered into that digital transformation. And this is clearly what we're tackling today. So it's funny because we keep hearing about like technical debt or IT legacy with technical debt. I think today it's pretty fair to talk about like environmental debt from an IT perspective, and this is exactly what we're trying to look at with Soft through a green up strategy. So maybe just like on this eco design topic, to conclude my first point, we believe that green ups should completely be embedded into the IT strategy. Similarly, that costs are taken into account, resilience are taken into account, security are taken into account, environmental perspectives should be taken into account.
Thank you, Jeremy. So we see that we had the overall strategy, then entrepreneurial projects that led to some eco score for business application, and that's the first step for carbon data, and a first step to go to the green ups. And would you say, Jeremy, that Soft acts as a green ups enabler, uh, as a support of an already implemented sustainable IT strategy led by Françoise?
Yeah, I think it's always the chicken and egg question. Like, do you start by defining your strategy and then you go for a solution, or is the solution that is going to drive where you need to focus? I think it's clear that Soft is acting as a tech enabler or a tech accelerator, but never this will be the solution that will drive the strategy, the governance, the KPIs, the targets. It's just the digital backbone of a green IT strategy. So I think it's important for companies to realize that having a target, having a direction is key, and probably a bit of agility here is important, so that you don't necessarily need to start by be completely clear about your strategy. You need to fully understand the importance of the topic, but yet you can start implementing solutions in a very pragmatic way before going for industrialization. But we'll talk about that in a few seconds. Maybe I don't know, Françoise, if you want to add a few things about that.
Yes. I will add some things about the big challenges we face when leading a sustainable IT strategy. When defining the strategy, I think that you need to take into account different parameters. In fact, the state of art is huge, and as your maturity grows, so does your strategy. That's what you said, Jeremy. And your strategy has to take into account ecosystems, training, impacts, governance, to move from quantification to tangible action. and regulations promote environmental labeling. For instance, in France, the REEN law, REEN law, has been put in force in November 2021, and which aim to reduce the digital footprint in France and make all digital players accountable. By the way, today there is no methodological standard for the environmental footprint of digital technology, but that means that we have to be ready for that. And next challenge, I would say, is the sustainable IT label, and this allows us to improve our sustainable approach as the label framework is thorough and comprehensive. Let me give you two examples. We were required to define a sustainable IT strategy for the next 18 to 36 months and make eco-design a wood standard for any IT projects, and then go further by ensuring all projects comply to our e-accessibility standards. That's the challenges we have to face.
Regarding the time here, you mentioned before that you made some pilots. How long did it take for you to build a pilot and then go to EcoScore?
It takes some time. In fact, actually, it took 3 to 6 months to define the overall strategy for the pilot, but then to make it operational, it took approximately 1 year, including training, acculturation, maturity improvement in the teams. It's a long process with many people to onboard due to the complexity of IT environmental data.
So thank you, Françoise. We can see here that your strategic overview includes a lot of people to onboard, a lot of short-time action and long-term action, a connection with the ecosystem also. You have the state of the art and the people publishing about new methodologies, and you have the regulations and the labels and the very short-term and long-term views. But do you already see, when you decided to implement an EcoScore, do you see the benefits of this decision?
Yes, Tristan. In fact, the benefits we are proud to report is that green IT is becoming a whole new pillar, as Jeremy said before. New project must now take into account, along with IT security, cost management, performance management. And to answer precisely your question, the EcoScore will be a tool used to enforce this new pillar for new project. And the second benefit, I think, is that the EcoScore will allow us to be ready for emerging regulatory standards.
Thank you, Françoise. We will move to second part. So we had here a talk mainly about the strategy and the overall challenges and stakes around eco-design and sustainable IT strategy. But I would like us to deep dive in the Green Eco project led at BNP Paribas BCF IT. And so question for Françoise, Jérémy, and Anand. I guess you faced many operational and technical challenges when leading this EcoScore project. Can you share some of them?
Thank you very much for the question, Tristan. Indeed, you're right that measuring the CO2 equivalent or the CO2 equivalent impact of an application or a larger information system is currently such a novel and new project and enterprise for organizations, including our own. So it obviously came with its fair share of operational challenges. So for the next couple minutes, Jérémy and I will talk about the top 3 challenges we faced from an operational perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we were preparing that session with Anand, we identified three main challenges or 3 main categories. I think there is one about like how do you go from data mapping to data collection automation, right? And the second is how do you make sure that you would anchor a green ops strategy into your operations through acculturation. And the third one, which is also a very key topic in large groups, is how do you ensure synchronization at all levels of the organization. So if you agree, Anand, probably let's deep dive on each of them and probably come back on the first one about like data mapping and data collection automation. So I think it will not be a surprise for anyone that is listening to us today, but there is no progress without measurements, and there is no metrics without data. So the question for us through the project and at Soft was not really like what data that we need, but where to get the right data, and how do we ensure that we have enough quality in the data that we collect to ensure scalability. Because at a group like BNP Paribas, the notion of scalability is obviously key. So I think in that context, and I think Francois touched on it, we had a very pragmatic approach, right? I think it was very important to say, look, don't think about industrialization first. Try to demonstrate the value and the feasibility and the value of your project on a very specific scope. Understand your IT landscape, understand how you need to map the data, understand how you will transform the data into an environmental score, and demonstrate that there is a value behind those data in the daily operations of your IT production teams. And I think this is what we did, and I think this is what we did at BCF IT. And this was only the starting point of industrialization. So maybe, Anand, you want to say a word on that?
Oh yes, absolutely. Thanks, Jeremy. So, as my my colleague and esteemed partner in this project, Jeremy just said, yes, the pilot in the ramp-up phase of this life cycle was indeed a resounding success. We proved something that was completely new. So obviously next in our ambitions came the industrialization or the upscaling of what we had just proven, which is a methodology and a data collection, to our own ambitions. And as you may know, managing a project in such an environment requires strict adherence to, clear and defined processes, especially if you want to automatically or automate your collection of multiple data points from different data sources. So that is where and when I joined the team, and together with the project team and Soft, we continuously iterated upon building a tool to retrieve precise and high quality data from multiple sources to calculate this eco score, as well as complying with any processes required by BNP Paribas. So in so many words, the first challenge was indeed, as Jeremy said, therefore, defining the inputs at the very beginning, and then identifying the data sources, the stakeholders, and automating the data collection of everything to build a eco score. I would like to move on to our second challenge now, if everybody's all right with that. For the second challenge, I would like to harken back to something Francois mentioned, in that because this is a relatively new approach and a new strategy, one operational challenge we faced was awareness. The Green Echo project is part of a larger program called Sustainable IT. And so one of our challenges was to raise awareness regarding what sustainable IT is, and provide optimal training to any involved stakeholders. This was achieved through onboarding and training of key developers and architects, so technical people within the project team, but also training and acculturating them in the ways of sustainable IT. Jeremy, maybe you have a bit more to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we said it pretty much all on this. Acculturation is key, and I think it's very normal. I mean, we saw that context in several clients. When you engage a team in such a program, you will always have questions like, how is that different from my FinOps initiative? How am I gonna have the right granularity to pilot it with the environmental score? How do you make sure that the environment score is right and with the right methodology? So all those questions are right questions, and I think it's very important to answer them and educate on that. But I think if I had to give one testimony, we were working with a FinOps leader in BCFIT team. And when he looked at the data we collected and the different cockpits visuals we presented, and he said, well, I guess, what, GreenOps is actually a lot more powerful than FinOps. I think this is where you think that you win, and then you make, a step forward, because according to that person, and I fully align with that, GreenOps is a lot more exhaustive. It brings a sustainable dimension that, we're not looking at before. And in a way, it's a lot more inclusive. So acculturation is key.
Absolutely. And as for our third and final operational challenge we would like to bring forth during this roundtable, it was from a very real standpoint, coordinating efforts both within our entity, so BCFIT, and the larger scope of BNP Paribas. This was achieved and resolved through continuous synchronization, again with BNP Paribas Group ESG department, and together with them and SOFT, we ensured that all relevant processes and methodologies were enforced, so everything fit.
Thank you, Anand and Jeremy, for these three challenges. In few words, so the first one is the data, from input to automation, how you help the company scale. The second one is around training, acculturation, awareness, how you empower the people and the tech doers, because that's them who have the keys and the levers then to develop and implement what you need for monitoring the strategy. And the last one is the consistency, how you have a good level of synchronization with the overall strategy of the company. It's very interesting to see that you have this specific operational challenges. And the question for you, Françoise, is with these challenges, did it have any impact on your strategic program?
Yeah, thank you, Tristan. Yes, I see. I would like to share with you two challenges from a management perspective. A green eco is part of the global sustainable IT policy. As I mentioned earlier, green eco is one of the tools we will use to deploy the strategy. As such, it is essential to define a clear governance for both the application of the strategy and the green eco project. It's not only the tool somewhere separate from the strategy. And finally, in the scaling phase, the challenge is to reach, as Jeremy said, the GreenOps vision, to analyze the figures from the tool. And I think there is a reflection to think about on the contribution of the GreenOps vision to the FinOps vision. It's a new deal.
Yeah, if I may, just to add a word on that, I think a key challenge that we often see is do not underestimate the efforts that is required behind it. This is a topic that engages a lot of people, and people are kind of passionate about this sustainable approach. But it takes time, it takes resources, and a dedicated project. I think it's important to have it in mind.
Thank you again, Jeremy, Françoise, and Anand. We can see that beyond your EcoScore project, the Green Eco project, you have a lot of key things to be implemented. The governance for your efficiency and the strategic alignment, the awareness at all organizational levels, from the top management to the tech doers, and also the technical challenges that you have around data identification, collection, automation, and how to get the right and accurate data in a secure way. So this is the reality behind the sustainable IT strategies. The idea is simple, but to get into the operationalization, it involves the whole organization if you want to get tangible benefits from it. And I saw that there is some questions related to how to go beyond than carbon, and we will deep dive in after the third part. But first, I would like to hear a little about Karine and Jeremy. So we had here the France overview of the maturity that we have, the challenges, the stakes. But Karine, you are in Sweden, and maybe you have a different perspective to add. And Jeremy, also, you have been traveling around to share for these challenges. Feel free to react.
Yes, I'm speaking now for Sweden, but I think I'm speaking for more countries than Sweden. And we are a bit behind you in France. As you mentioned, Francoise, you have the REEN law that you have been discussing for a few years, and that had made you more aware. It's you have been talking about the subject that sustainable IT shouldn't be mixed with using IT for doing sustainable solutions. It needs to be integrated. I have spoken to people around here in different companies, and when I say and talk about it, it's still that they are, oh, I didn't really know about this. So we are on, we can say, the awareness level that we need to start talking about it to take the next step. Because the awareness is the first step for saying, I want to do something about it. If they have started and they say, well, we're working with it, it's more the equipment. And I think that might have to do with our Nordic culture, that we want to take care of the nature and those parts. But we need to now incorporate the other parts to make real sustainable IT. I don't know, Jeremy, what is your...
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, France for the last decade, and I guess the Accord de Paris was a great starting point. Has been very engaged and very dynamic towards sustainability on the international scene, but more specifically on green IT. Yeah, it's true that we act, I believe, as a leader, at least on the European scene. I used to work for a large multinational IT integrator, and more we were seeing like IT leaders asking us like what do we do to support our digital transformation journey with with an environmental perspective, and I guess when you look at the maturity of companies, most of them are located in France. And it's not a surprise because we have great leaders in France that have been working on the topic, on the science and literature for more than a decade now. So that explains, I guess, some of it. But the good news is, in our opinion, IT is global, right? There is no, I would say, macro specificities from one country to another, from one company to another. You will often find the same technological stack at clients from an infra perspective, cloud perspective, or even inventory perspective. So I think we have a clear role to play in France to speed up the adoption of green IT in other countries. And hopefully the regulation, I think you touched on it, Karin and Tristan, in your intro, the regulation will probably support it with the CSRD or the Green Deal being more, I would say, more rich when it comes to digital sobriety.
Yes, if I may add one sentence, I would say that what makes me happy is that we can maybe ride on your experience and speed up faster. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
And another good news is that thanks to the CSRD and the Green Deal, many industrial companies, they realize that they have to move forward faster and that compensation policies are not the solution. Every part of the company has to move forward, the business and the IT. And the IT here has a clearly double role in the organization. IT as a part of a solution, but if you put everything on IT impacts will skyrocket. So sustainable IT as an actionable or reachable approach for exemplarity and to make things right.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is always the topic of like, sustainable IT or green IT or IT for green. But yeah, I mean, IT is a key enabler, to have this sustainable journey. And it's funny because often, we hear from companies, well, look, IT is only representing like 1% of 2% of my, environmental footprint. But yet you see OEMs, Stellantis, Saint-Gobain, Vinci, working on it. And there is a reason behind it. So let's not forget the relative perspective versus the absolute numbers and the absolute impact of IT.
Yeah, the mix there, what you say with sustainable IT and IT for sustainability is, as I said before, it's something that I can see that people mix here. And what I also thought about is that many companies have sustainability as part of their strategy, and they also have IT as part of their strategy, but they haven't really thought about how the IT is, as you say, affecting the sustainability goals. And also when I've spoken to people working with sustainability, they, at least here, they have been a little bit also astonished about the what the effects of IT can have. And also that they find them a little bit difficult to talk about and really have as a subject. So there we can also help the people working with sustainability to get the steps forward.
And furthermore, you have also the double approach that, okay, what's the impact of my IT in my my CIO on environment? Okay, but if I go further, what's the impact of climate change crisis of my IT systems? And here you can touch the point eco-resilience and the necessity to deep dive into the multi-criteria analysis to go further than just carbon accounting, but also what's the water impacts, the material impacts, the resource scarcity that you face when you implement more and more IT systems and devices everywhere in every industrial process, in every IT solution. So go further than carbon will be a key, even if today, as Julien mentioned in the chat, today it's not as accurate as CO2. So I would say that CO2 is a starting point because we have skills and understanding and literature about it and research, but it's a starting point to go deep diver.
Tristan, if I may, really interesting points. I also have a question from a very, again, real perspective. In your expert opinion, why should CIOs embrace this topic of sustainable IT? And again, in your opinion, what can be an example of a few triggers to help kickstart this journey?
Good question. I think that today few CIOs are really committed to sustainable IT or sustainability. But then you can demonstrate that sobriety and this approach can have an impact on the costs. You get the organization's approval to move on sustainable IT projects. So there is a directly linked, as Jeremy mentioned, between the FinOps and the GreenOps. And when the FinOps teams come to say, okay, GreenOps goes further than what I have, and also you have also the people are more inclined to work for GreenOps than FinOps because they don't want to care about the cost, but they want to care about environment. So that's the first one. And the second one is that IT is a part of the business strategy. So being sustainable as a company requires leading the way, and to lead the way you have also to embrace sustainable IT at company scale. Even for your IT for sustainability project, you have to embed exemplarity and sustainable IT. So the new double role of the CIO, help business and help IT to limit the impacts. Before we still have 10 minutes before going to the Q&A session, I would like to hear a last word from you all. What would be the future of IT in one word? And we can start with Françoise.
Thank you, Tristan. In one word, sustainable IT is not only about eco-design, eco-score, or carbon footprint. It is also about impact on resources, social impacts, and inclusive IT. So in one word, it's responsibility for me. And Karin, for you, in one word?
Well, I absolutely believe that we need the IT for solving the problems and challenges we have for the future. But as we have spoken about this last minutes, we need to think about the consequences of using IT, and mitigate the risks and use as little as possible, be as effective as we can. So it's a balance there. That's the word for me. Using it, but being aware. And Jeremy, what's your?
I think the word I would pick would be visible. Let's make the impact of IT visible to all our stakeholders. We did not even mention the impact of IT at global level when it comes to CO2 emissions, but when we know that in 2030 this will be almost the equivalent of the automotive industry, you can clearly think that yes, there is a topic to tackle, but too many or too few people are aware of this. So let's make it visible in a context where you need to remember that $4 trillion are spent on an annual basis by companies in their digital transformation. So yes, there is a strong business case behind it. And I guess, Anand, you want to go next?
Thank you. In one word, I'm actually going to say two words then. Discipline and rigor. I would liken this approach to maybe people watching might recognize this, but I would liken implementing sustainable IT to long distance or ultra running. It requires skills, but it also requires a lot of discipline and rigor, because it is not impossible, but one needs those two things to make it happen. That being said, I cannot help but notice there is one person we haven't heard from for their one word to describe all this. Tristan.
Thank you, Anand. I would say that for me, it's consistency. It's do things that have impact, but do it well. Don't put IT everywhere when it's not needed. And the question here is, when do you know that you need IT or not to have environmental gains? What's the good balance? And this requires data and KPIs and measurements. So consistency in the philosophy, but then in the operations also. And though we can jump to the questions regarding the multi-criteria analysis, I think it would be a great opportunity for a more large roundtable, but we had a small word about it. I think the question from Emily, that double materiality is a key topic, and eco-resilience, actually, you're right, not so many sustainability strategies include this part of eco-resilience. Today, we are working with some CIOs to help them anticipate what will be the IT system that they handle in the next 3, 4, 5 years, including energy prices augmentation, including draw or water shortage, including hardware shortage or price increase, and how can you adapt your information system to make it more resilient with the thing of limiting the impact that it has, because you will make the crisis even worse. So I think it's an emerging topic where there is a lot to imagine and to say about. So I would be glad to talk with you about that.
I then also have another question, and that's for you, Francoise. When you have the Eco score now, do you plan to use that for decommissioning applications?
Yes. In fact, we have already a decommissioning roadmap for application, but the Eco score will help us to prove that in our decommissioning roadmap, there is not only the financial impact to take into account, and that's where we have to mix the GreenOps vision with the FinOps vision, and it's another way to improve in our process of decommissioning, and that will add another dimension to our strategy.
Thanks.
Another question from Omar, where will you get the data? What do you have as technical specifications? Do you have data covering direct, indirect, end of life carbon footprint? Maybe for you, Jeremy? Or Anand, if you want to elaborate.
Yeah, I mean, I can start, and then Anon, you can build on it. Yeah, I mean, the sources are obviously very different from one client to another. But I think what's important for us, as I mentioned earlier, is the data quality of the the data quality that we need to get to have an exhaustive and as precise as possible an environmental footprint. So when I say as precise as possible, is usually an evaluation, because we know that methodologies and standards are still evolving on a daily basis. So I think this is important to keep that in mind. But yes, we will plug ourselves into the solutions and the monitoring solutions that our clients have deployed locally. I don't know if I know you want to build on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with. We are completely aligned. Unfortunately, Omar, I don't know if I can really get into the specifics without infringing upon any secrecy. But no, along with Soft, we elaborated a method to precisely identify what we needed. Then it was a matter of doing a little bit of archaeology and figuring out where and who were the data owners for that. But yes, Soft's methodology does indeed cover the full life cycle of everything, essentially everything you want to measure. But if you want to talk about it, I'd be happy to have you shoot me a mail.
Thank you, Anand. Also, we have a question from Sarah. How do you deal with mindset changes in the firms to ensure a successful decarbonization of the IT, which is a key point for the firms? I think, Françoise, you have a Green IT ambassadors community, and Anand, you participated also in the training and acculturation process. Maybe both of you can elaborate on that.
Yes, Françoise is the expert, so I will let her answer.
I think it's part of the strategy to onboard people. So first, we begin with ambassador that carry out the project of the green IT, and help people, help teams, help the squad, in fact, to raise awareness. And the objective is that everybody become an ambassador, because our strategy is to be sustainable by design. So when all people will be aware of, will have the skill, I will say, to say that the sustainable IT will be by design in our project. We will not have anymore to think about that as something to say that as something to implement, because we will do it on purpose.
And if I may add something, I think what you said is very interesting. And so you have the top-down view that you need to have at a higher strategic level with the plan, and you have the bottom-up with the technical skills. And
Yes.
in other ways, you have, and that's your part, and the Jeremy's part is you have the data and the measurement, and you have the training, and they go hand in hand. If you have the data without the training, people will not know what to do of this data. And training without data, you don't know where to go. So you need both of them to define your clear
Yes.
strategic plan.
Yes. And that's part of the deal to join the both, in fact, the tool and the training. Perhaps you want to add something, Jeremy, for that.
No, I think it was rightly said. Solution is not all, strategy is not all, training is not all, and the most important here is how do you start your journey in a very pragmatic way, step by step, define a precise scope, try to do it manually, demonstrate feasibility, value, then scale.
Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you all of you for this fascinating talk that we have. For those who were listening to this webinar live, feel free to get in touch with our Devoteam experts and devo.team/sustainability, and we will be pleased to have more insights and talk about you and how to help you kickstart this journey in the companies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so
Bye-bye.
much, everyone.
Bye.